Let's carry on looking at some of the theory in the morning around the practice. Yesterday, I think we looked a little bit at the process of practice here. That's right, isn't it? That was yesterday? Yeah, okay. The idea of Taoism and Tao and really understanding the process behind it. But now we need to look a little bit at the mechanics behind the Qi Gong or the energetic aspect of Neigong practice. Obviously, those of you who've been here a while would be more than familiar with this, but I just want to summarize a little bit about sort of working with the Dantian and things. So apologies for repeats if you've been here a little while, but I want to catch people up. And obviously after these 2 days, then the complexity of what I do will shift, will go up as well, yeah? But very much we need to look at the foundations and an understanding of what the Dantian is and how it's cultivated, because it's actually quite an intricate thing. It's an intricate and fiddly process, but I wouldn't say particularly difficult. I don't think it's hard. It's just there's a few moving bits that just kind of need understanding. And if you do have the understanding of all the bits, it's not that, I wouldn't say it's difficult. It's just a bit, you just have to kind of play with it a little bit and understand all the parts. So to understand the Dantian, we should understand that it's not, first thing is it's not automatically there in anybody. You don't have a Dantian when you first start. And in fact, you won't even have a Dan, the elixir aspect of it, for probably, well, most people ever. It's a very, very difficult thing to cultivate. Like the Dan is like the final part of the alchemical process. It's the highest level of attainment in alchemy, pretty much. So the name Dantian even is a little misleading. What we can develop is the Tian aspect, is the field part of it, okay? Because Dantian translates as elixir field. So it's the area of cultivation and development and storage of the qi, essentially the building of the battery within the abdominal space. And then it's also the point which can motivate and direct the qi through the body as well, if we know how to use it. So developing the Dantian has a few parts to it. The first part of it is pretty much what we looked at yesterday, which is your body. You know, we can't jump straight to the energetic. The body has to be in an okay condition for what we're doing. So all of those principles of opening the body up and lengthening all of the tissues and creating space inside the body, and then releasing the qua so that things can sink inside. Jamja lids, the cap of your shoulders, that's quite important as well, so everything goes down, and then settling and basing everything into the feet. All of those things need to be there within your body, which to me would be the start point for any, I don't know what you'd say, serious qigong practice, I suppose, or I don't know what the word is there, but you know what I mean, someone who's actually trying to sort of cultivate the internal qualities. Those should be there first, like investing in transforming your body is pretty important to get it in the state you need, because otherwise your tool is going to be a bit dodgy and you're going to be trying to put a nail in with a screwdriver or something. It's possible, but going to be difficult. So we need to transform the body as best we can, yeah? That kind of work, realistically, for a Naegong practitioner at the beginning wants to be quite a lot of your focus. So say you were doing, I don't know, whatever, hour and a half practice session or something on your own, I would say that 2/3 of it probably should be for the body at first. We shouldn't even really concern ourselves too much with the Dantian or the Qi, really, because some people might have more sensitivity to what's going on in the body or not, but I mean, to me, sensitivity is overrated, to be perfectly honest. I don't really even think it's that important whether you have it or not. It's not the be all or end all, and some people are more sensitive, some people are not so sensitive. You'll kind of come together and find a sort of happy ground at some point with Neigong anyway, because overly sensitive people normally will find their sensitivity will drop a little bit through Neigong practice, and then unsensitive people, that's me, will find that they become more sensitive to what's going on inside their body through the Neigong process, and that's what will happen. There's like a happy point in the middle, because you don't really want to be feeling what's going on for everybody else all the time, which is a part of the problem lots of overly sensitive people have, because then you've not only got to deal with your own discomforts, you've got to deal with everybody else's discomforts as well, and that's just annoying, so we don't want that. And if you're completely insensitive, you're going to need to be able at some point to feel what's going on inside the body. But all that kind of change towards a happy medium will come of its own accord, generally. So we don't really have to concern ourselves with any of that. It doesn't matter. What's more important at the beginning is that you spend your time getting the body sorted so the circuitry is in place. And people will struggle with the same things. Shoulders, not open enough. That's going to be a big one, isn't it? Qua, not functioning as it should do. That's going to be a big one because most people want to move from their hips. Not enough space in the joints. That's a big, it's always the same. It's very rare you get someone with like, whoa, that's a weird body problem. It's almost always the same thing. Those parts of your body need opening up. So generally for 99.9% of people, we can do the same things. Stretch them out, open them up, rotate the joints, sink the qua, drop the pelvis, and all the things we were looking at yesterday. Yeah. Weirdly, different groups have different problems, I find. So there are national differences. I don't really know why. Isn't that weird? It's like landmass areas or something, because it's clearly not cultural, because countries are multicultural these days. There's Asian people and Indian people and African people and Caucasian people all over the whole planet, all mixing together. But land masses have issues. So for example, in Europe, I find quite often people tend to struggle a lot with the spinal alignment. Seems to be very difficult for them. So I have to spend a lot of time developing and working with the spine. It's why things like the Dragon Dao Yin became very important to me over there in Europe, because I struggle with the spine. Americans, it's less the spine. You tend to struggle with capping down to your feet. That seems to be the difficult thing. So capping, I mean like the shoulders, elbows and hands touching the ground tends to be the trickier thing. And I don't know why. I don't know if that's a psychological difference between cultures or like just a shed. I don't no idea. I wouldn't even want to concern myself with it. But in my experience, that tends to be what's a bit more difficult here is capping down to the ground. You know what I mean? So that the chi doesn't come up. It's like you guys often just really don't like that. You don't want that to happen. So I would say focus on that a lot in your body structure. And then you can assist it with the releasing of Tian Tu as well to release here. These are all the things that send the chi down from above. Yeah, just as a pointer, just as a pointer. So once the body is built and the body is developed or developing, you don't have to do one, complete it, and then on to the next part. It's okay, we can run them alongside each other. We have the other aspect, which is understanding the nature of the Dantian and how to develop it, yeah? The battery that's built in the lower abdominal space. Yeah, so we'll look at that a little bit. Okay with that, with the body? Understand, yeah? Remember your body mechanics as well are not built into your muscles or anything, yeah? It's not even your skeletal alignment. I mean, you want your skeleton to be lined up as best you can, but if you have, you know, something like one leg shorter than the other or an injury or I don't know, whatever it is that you might have that's misaligned the bones, it's not going to actually ruin your qigong practice or your neigong practice. It really isn't. The thing with alignments, I think that sometimes that people have got wrong is that people have thought qigong or tai chi or neigong, whatever, is an alignment art. It's not like a physical alignment art. So I've seen crazy things, sorry, if any of you do this, I've just called it crazy, I apologize. Not that anti it, I just think it's beside the point. Where people do things like line up sticks against bodies and stuff like this, like put a ruler down to the ground to check the, sorry if you do it, I don't mean to be offensive, like to line up your spine or whatever, or they get really exact about a millimeter either way or something just for alignment's sake. I mean, it's okay, but it's not really what Qigong is about. I mean, funnily enough, one of the best practitioners I've met by a long way, I would actually say his alignments are pretty poor with regards to his skeleton. He's all over the shop just because he doesn't really care. It's not a part of what he does. Maybe his alignments were good in the past, but now I guess the word I would use is extravagant, perhaps, with regards to how he uses his body would be the best description I could use. It's unusual for sure. But it's because he understands ultimately that it's not an alignment arc for alignment's sake. It's not like one of those sort of Western body things that's trying to get you a certain way. And sometimes if people over-focus on those alignments, they become overly stiff, a bit rigid anyway. Like you can see someone who's really obsessed with alignments, can't you? They walk around like it looks like they've got a broom stuck up their ass. They don't look comfortable, like they're very, when they walk around or something. The alignments in the body and the skeleton are used in order to drop the weight and hang the flesh from the bones in a particular fashion. That's really what it's for. That's what the alignments are there for. So we move your skeleton around until essentially most of your body mass is off of the joints and off of the large muscle groups, not your thighs and your calves, I know, but off of most of the large muscle groups so that we can then hang the flesh off the bone so that it stretches and opens everything up. That's it. That's essentially what it's for. And then the alignment of the Wu Ji drops the center down to the lower abdomen, and then that's what it's for. Once it has achieved those things, we can say the cause has led to the desired effect. Then it's done, right? Then actually the alignments can either change, or at later stages in the process, they don't actually become very important. It doesn't matter too much once things are activated and things are moving. Does that make sense? Do you understand that, yeah? It's like a bit sort of tail wagging the dog if you end up making you use that saying in America, right? Okay, cool. If you use your art to become purely about alignments as if that is the result, when actually the alignments are the cause. It's like switched around, right? So we don't have to worry too much. I'm only saying that as well because I had a lot of people come up to me yesterday saying they had this injury and that injury and whatever, which of course, if you've lived a life, you're going to have injuries. Your body is not going to be perfect. There's going to be things wrong. Don't worry. It's not going to totally screw up what you're doing. It's okay. It doesn't matter. Yeah. Saying that, you don't want to stand like, you know what I mean? There's limits. We still do our best, yeah. So with the Dantian, we need to understand, first of all, that we need three parts to get the Dantian going, three components to essentially gather it. Remember yesterday I talked about it needs to consolidate a little bit. First of these, to completely contradict everything I just said, would be your posture. Would be your posture. But understand, right? I'm not saying it's about perfect alignments, right? I'm not saying it's about standing as straight as you can or something like this. You know the stiff qigong body I mean, right? You've seen it, right? Because the alignments are so perfect, yeah? We don't want that. You want to be free in your body, yeah, natural in your body, comfortable in your body, yeah? So the posture, which is designed to, remember, drop your American spelling, ER. Drop your center. Drop your center down. That's the first thing, and that's really major. Do remember, don't want to repeat myself too much, but if the qua is not open, you are essentially propping up your center from inside. It's like something, I don't know what it is, but it's like something inside the torso is pushing back against that which you wish to drop. So therefore the hourglass can't open, the qi can't sink, it can't drop, it just kind of gets stuck, it gets caught. So this must release, yeah, and this must switch off on the outside so you can sit, yeah, so that the center drops down. For people who are on the the dense side of the sensitivity spectrum, which is definitely where I came from, like that side of it. Who's a brick? Any other bricks in here? Yeah, there we go. That's all right. Nothing wrong with that. So if you're on the brick side of the spectrum, difficult to feel things, then essentially not dropping the center is your biggest problem. Is it's going to be very difficult for the Dantian to form. That's the problem. It's going to have difficulty forming. If you're on the other side of the spectrum, a little bit more sensitive, then the problem is that your qi is going to tend to rise if you don't release the center. And rising qi means more heat, more stimulation of the nervous system and the adrenals and the mind, and generally sort of moving towards fight or flight. So therefore we want that center to drop down. When your center moves from there, which is where it will get caught, to here in the lower abdomen, you'll just, oh wow, I don't need all that qi in my head. And that's what will happen, it will drop out. So it will make it more comfortable for your practice. So both groups, bricks or whatever the other side of the spectrum is, non-bricks, they both need it for various reasons. There's benefits for it, yeah? So it's to drop the center, and it's also to hang I'll use the Chinese collective word for it, flesh they use, hang the flesh. So hanging the flesh means a combination of bones and, sorry, not bones, the other ones, muscles and sinews and connective tissue and skin, anything that's not bone, essentially, just has to hang off of that frame. When we hang the flesh off of the bones, yeah, what that means is everything can stretch inside and start to open up. That's what we're using the posture for. So that your skeleton becomes like a sort of drying rack for wet clothes, if you want, and everything just hangs off of that drying rack, and as it stretches, we can keep releasing more and more and more, and it opens up more space inside the body. Later, much later, that becomes important because it also opens up some of the qi production factories, if you want, that exist within the spaces in the tissues. But that's a bit later. For now, mostly we want everything just to stretch open, yeah? So that's the posture. That's pretty much what they're for. Oh, and all the obvious things. Take the weight off your joints and all that kind of stuff to protect your body. Second part would be the breath. Things we already mentioned. So this abbreviation seems to have been copyrighted by the Academy people, ATB. I didn't know what they were writing about when people in the Facebook group kept asking about ATB. It sounds like sort of brakes on a truck or something, but it's anchor in the breath. Anchor in the breath, yeah. So anchor in the breath obviously wants to be there, that quality down. You cannot overdo that practice with amounts wise, and I would say that it's one of those practices that, as simple as it appears, you want to do sat on a bus or whatever for 10 minutes, sat in the chair when you rest, like it just constantly, anytime you have chance, just observe the breath and let it anchor down. It's very important just to get that quality there. And then the other one, of course, is reverse breathing. I can't reach. Reverse breathing, yeah. To learn how to get that abdominal, I don't even like the term reverse breathing because I guess that it has so many connotations already and so many different ideas what reverse breathing is. I mean specifically this method, it is the name for it, that method where the inner sphere closes around that point. It will take a bit to refine. It takes a little bit. It's like, you can adjust a shoulder, you can adjust an arm or a rib or a hip or whatever, but it's quite difficult to adjust the fascial sac within your abdomen, so you have to play with it a little bit, but it will come. But you want that sphere closing around that point in the lower abdomen to help direct everything into that space and seal some, not all, but some of the leakages in that area, yeah? So you're okay with this, I think. It's what we looked at yesterday, yeah?
Do you have a recommendation? I know things change over the progression of time, but
yeah.
For how much time to do reverse breath, say?
Well, I think it depends on how good your anchoring the breath is. Okay. Depends where you are on that. I would always emphasize this first, as best you can. So if you're still working on anchoring the breath, then sometime, I know that's a very generic answer, but sometime, spend a little bit of time on it. But just remember that it should be secondary to anchoring the breath. Even when your reverse breathing is really good, still observing the breath is a good idea for a while. The funny thing is, though, when your anchoring the breath is, whatever we say, perfect, or as close to be, along that scale, when it's very good, you'll find you'll automatically get switched to reverse breathing. Your body will change over. It's not even necessarily something you have to do. You'll just suddenly realize that something is switched and the abdomen changes and it gets drawn in from inside.
Well.
Reverse breathing to anchor in the breath?
Yeah.
No.
That's interesting.
No, not usually, no. Reverse breathing is an advancement on anchoring the breath. And it turns into this often because the Dantian starts to pull at some stage.
So
yeah.
it's really kind of like that song breath you were speaking of, things just follow.
Yeah. Yeah, this is Neigong really is an evolutionary path along the process of body efficiency. As much as anything, you're just making things function more efficiently, well, trying as best we can all the time, yeah. Sometimes there's a hiccup or two, but, we can do our best. Third part is the mind, okay. Now the mind is going to be the biggest hurdle to everybody at some stage, because at some stage you're going to hit the challenge of, oh right, okay, this tool might not be as efficient as it could be for this task. It's going to be a little bit of a complex part of the process. And what will happen is people develop the body and they can develop the breathing quite good, but then the mind is going to be a sticking point for a long time. If I were to talk about all of the qualities of mind that are useful for it, it's long. It's going to take a while, so I won't focus on that too much. That's a fairly lengthy process. But it comes down to these two words that I try to differentiate between a lot with people, which is attention versus intention. Attention versus intention. Every single teacher I had that was good at what they were doing and very deep into the process would spend a lot of time talking about these. There's one teacher in particular, it was probably about 3 years, every single day, that was all he spoke about, was the difference between attention and intention in various ways. So you can imagine how much conversation and lessons I had and how tired I was getting of those words. I'll be totally honest, I'm not the most patient of people, but it was just extensively going on and on and on, always deeper and deeper and deeper into what attention and intention are, layer after layer after layer. It's very, very intricate. And essentially with regards to your mental study, for Neigong, this becomes, for everybody at some stage, the focal point for your understanding of how to use the mind properly. Because you will realize that attention, this is what I'm saying, listen inside. What I'm saying is apply your attention ultimately, to be attentive to the process that's going on. Most people will find, everybody will find. You don't find exceptions. Everybody will come to the same conclusion at some stage, but I'll tell you what that conclusion is. Some people will buck against it, but then they'll come to that conclusion themselves, is you realize you've never actually paid attention to anything ever. That's what happens, not fully. You haven't. I haven't. It's tricky. And if you can fully apply attention to something, then the process just unfolds immediately. I think that the difference between these two is probably more important than any other mental quality in any meditation system as well. So people within Buddhist systems, whatever it may be, or Hindu systems, or whatever, I don't know, whatever system they're in, normally are held back in whatever they're doing because of these qualities, the difference between attention and intention. Yeah. Obviously, intention means to have a mental action, right? To have something. And again, I keep it brief because I want to focus on the Dantian. I think that's more important for now with regards to where you are. But remember, you can find talks by me elsewhere on this if you're interested. But it's the difference between conscious intention, which is telling yourself to do something. Okay, that is, I want my Dantian to do this. I want my Qi to do this, or whatever. That's conscious intention. Then there's subconscious intention, which is I'm going to attentively listen to my Dantian, but all of those other parts of my nature are carried forward at the same time. Yeah, so essentially that's your personality is a large part of it. So on a simplistic level, maybe putting your mind there, but at the same time having some kind of background emotional quality, for example, because everybody has that. Maybe you're a little bit more angry, maybe you're a little bit more worried, maybe a little bit more anxious, maybe you're more judgmental, maybe you're more competitive. It doesn't matter, whatever those qualities are. And obviously human nature is very complicated. There's a whole spread of different qualities you can carry across, isn't there? But those qualities of who you are will be carried across with your mind when you place it onto something. So even though you think you're purely listening, you're not really, because you still have what we call subconscious intention there. Do you understand that? So that's the difficulty, is you literally have to eradicate who you are, even if only for a short, not forever, you need to function, but just while you're doing something in order to purely apply attention to any given process. So it makes it hard because your personality will distort whatever happens with any given process. Do you understand that? It's difficult. It becomes hard. You end up wading through layer after layer of the things that are preventing you from applying pure attention. It becomes a lengthy process. Yeah.
But was it our intention to come here in the first place to do all this? Or
Yes. Yeah. But
so it's a different.
well, it's applied during practice, isn't it? I mean, I need the intention in order to get up and open the door and walk out the hall or something, but I don't want that intention while I'm involved in any process. So it goes into that idea of Wu Wei or Dao, right? Like one of the.
So it's in the process.
Yeah, I mean, as an example, like if you ever truly apply attention to what you're doing, then the reason why you're doing something should disappear anyway during that process. So even if you were to sit and put your mind onto your breath, that there's intention that I'm going to sit here and apply to my breath, of course, but within a short space of time that should go, so that you're not even aware particularly of why you did this exercise in the first place, and that's essentially means you're entering into that space. And the first thing that happens is starts to break down is time, you'll realize as well, because intention and time go together at the same time. They go hand in hand. So when you start to apply your attention properly, you find that you look up and you've been sat there for 15 hours, 16 hours, 17 hours. It's that kind of length. Like, it's crazy. Once attention is applied, it's like everything else just dissolves away. And you realize that even the sort of fabric of how you judge things like time or location or whatever is based in subconscious intention that's there. But obviously we can't do that while functioning, because if you're taking 17 hours to turn a door handle, it's going to get annoying for the people behind you. Yeah. And then the other version, just in brief, is unconscious intention. Yeah, so the things that you can't even be aware of, and you can't do much about those, you're unconscious of them. So that's going to be stored traumas and forgotten memories and things like that. But those things, the process of attention through meditation is to move something from unconscious to subconscious to conscious, so that it can be let go of to lead towards attention. There's a whole process involved in that. Yeah. So when the mind is applied to the Dantian and the breath in the best way we can on a sliding scale, right? And the breath is applied to the Dantian and the posture is used to drop the center to the Dantian, then what will happen is essentially the ingredients are there and then the Dantian can be worked with. That's the basis of the process. Yeah, and we have different ways of doing it, different tools, but those three ingredients must be there. If the breath is not right, but the posture and the mind are there, it will not start. If the mind and the breath are there, but the posture is not dropping the center, it won't work. Okay, all three of those ingredients need to be there. And that's the basis to me for initiating that sort of process to get this going. Normally what you find is that if people are struggling, it's because they've got 2 out of 3. Like one of those ingredients is not right. And that's what we need to change a little bit, yeah? Okay, so far? Easy, yeah? So, Dantian. We need to understand for the Dantian the basis of what Qi is. Yeah. So one of the things they always say in books, qigong books, Chinese medicine books, is there's no definitions for Qi, that it's an abstract thing. It's not true. That is your biggest error. If you believe that Qi is an abstract term, you're already lost. That would be like having no definition. How are you going to use it? You must have a definition for something, otherwise the word shouldn't be used. It's meaningless, essentially. So that context or translation of the word might change, obviously. Your definition might adjust as you go through the process. So your definition for one stage might be different at another stage. That it might evolve, and then you realize the old definition can fade away. That's normal as you develop, as your practice develops. So what you will find is a definition now for the term Qi is one I will use now, but with seniors I might define it a little differently because it depends where they are in the process, but still it can be defined. Yeah. You also have to understand that the term Qi changes according to the context. So part of the reason people can't define Qi is because they're trying to come up with a term that goes across every single spectrum, from feng shui to Qi Gong to general conversation to qualities of health to Chinese medicine or whatever. And obviously the term Qi is used differently in those different contexts. Yeah? So it's difficult for me to align the Qi of feng shui with the Qi of Naegong. There are some parallels, but they're different contexts, different definitions. Yeah. So within the context of Naegong, when we're talking about Qi, we're talking about 2 different things. I'm not talking about the Qi of health from Chinese medicine. I'm not using that term. When I say channels, I don't mean the same as Chinese medicine either when I talk about Neigong. If I say points, I don't mean the same thing as I mean in Chinese medicine. The context is a little different. There is some shared context, but it's not totally the same. Yeah, so we need to understand what we're working with here. First of these is Yin Qi. Second of these is Yang Qi. And all Neigong traditions try to understand what these were. Okay, what were these, or how do we work with them? What were these 2 substances? Because ultimately what you need is lots of both. It's that simple. You need to be greedy for the accumulation of Yin and Yang Qi at some stage, because you need to build. Curiously, because it's Taoism, I suppose, and because of the mechanisms of the mind, we accumulate by letting go of the greed. That's a funny thing. It's like a contradiction in terms at some stage in the practice, but still there needs to be a build-up or an accumulation of these 2 substances. Yin Qi provides the form or direction or structure of the body's Qi. That's really what it does. It provides the form, direction and structure of the body's Qi. It organizes things, yeah, which are yin qualities, right? Form, direction, structure. Yin Qi okay, needs to gather and consolidate. So it tends to form in spheres or fields, essentially. It builds like this. So anything that builds in a place around the center within your body, within Neigong we would classify as Yin Qi. So it's a little different from Chinese medicine, right? Not quite the same. But some shared properties, but not quite the same. So it needs to form in spheres around the center. It is experienced in the body as either magnetism, that's what it feels like, magnetic. Yeah, it's felt as that, or as a sensory experience, such as heaviness, suddenly being drawn downwards, or something like that, like the body gets heavy, or the squeezing. Some of you experienced yesterday. This is the Yin Qi closing, yeah, because that field, when it gathers, for some reason, will grab a hold of the body. It's like it grabs the tissues and starts to pull, shape, and reform the shape of the body. At later stages, not that late, a little bit further down the line, we can actually reshape the structure of the body internally using the Yin Qi. So when fields are built and they become strong enough, it's like you have a sphere, yeah, magnetic sphere. Your body will actually start to twist and form around those spheres. So it will curve everything inside your body. So often you see diagrams of Jianzhong or Tai Chi or whatever, where they draw circle like under the armpits here and under the legs, like they're on a space hopper or something like that, or under the knees, or sometimes spiraling around or whatever. And sometimes the mistaken instruction, in my opinion, is to imagine a sphere or sit on a ball or spin your body, but it's not really that. What they were trying to indicate originally was that your muscles and your tissues will form in spheres around your bones, around the wrapping around the bones, yeah, the spiral. Like the bones are the frame. The muscles are separated from that frame, and as the Yin Qi forms, those fields will reshape the tissues around the bones, and they form in circles. So your skeletal structure is still square. I can't make my bones circular. Straight line, elbow, straight line, joint. You know what I mean? It's still I can't curve it, or I don't want to curve it. That doesn't sound awesome. I want to be square in the body, the skeleton, but the flesh will wrap and curve around it to form circles, and you will feel it. Now, because your body perception is weird, like, you know what I mean, it's odd, yeah? Like when I tip you forward a few degrees, you feel like sometimes you're, like if I open my eyes, I'm going to be looking at the floor or something, what's going on? Like body perception is odd. That when a tiny little circular movement in your tissues, when you listen to your body, can suddenly feel like you're the Michelin Man. You have that guy in America? Okay, the tire guy, yeah, it's like, oh my God, then you look in the mirror and you realize, oh, thank God, none of that. Like it's because your body perception is very, very strange when those circles form. So you'll feel a lot more spherical inside than you are generally on the body. Yeah? So we want that to happen. We want that magnetic qi to build. And it's not literally magnetic, you know what I mean? But that's what it feels like. It's experienced as this. Yeah. So we want it to build so that it can form the structure, because qigong is what? An internal art, right? So therefore, the shaping is done internally. That's the basis of it. I'm not trying to do it on the outside, I'm trying to do it on the inside. It doesn't matter what I do with my skeleton, it's still, okay, that's confusing because the bones are the deepest part of your body, right? But if it's done with my structure, it's still external. Yeah, it's not inside. My tissues have to reshape and curve around all the bones. You cannot do this consciously. It has to be done by building and gathering the Yin Qi. Do you understand that? Does that make sense, yeah? It's like if you have a big field here around your Dantian, and there's another one here around the solar plexus, and another one forms up here, whatever, there's a series of them, then I'm going to draw these arrows totally wrong, but you kind of get what I mean. It's like it starts to pull and draw like this, kind of sucking and directing the Yang Qi ultimately through your system. But it's not enough for us just to feel it. You know, like some people are like, oh, I feel it spiraling around. It's like, well, that's okay, but we need it thicker and thicker so that not just feeling it, it actually pulls your body into different shapes. Yeah. And at that stage, there's definitely no relaxation in your body, because it's like someone's just going through all the tissue on the inside to reshape the form. Yeah, it feels nice. I like it because I like to feel strong. Like it feels good. Like it's like someone's doing it. It's like you've sort of been to the gym and sort of pumped up or something, but inside. Yeah, so it's a good feeling when it comes. Do you understand this one? Okay, cool. The other thing with Yin Qi is, curiously, it leads Yang Qi. It leads Yang Qi. So I guess you could get into sort of cosmology and philosophy of yin and yang interweaving and yin guiding yang and all those things if you wanted to, but the basis of it is that the Yang Qi will move into these fields. It will circulate around it. So it's how we organize the direction of the Yang Qi flow. So in brief, Yang Qi, what it controls is energy, Yang Qi. Okay, should say what Yang Qi is, right? It controls energy. So I don't mean like esoteric, but like vitality. Wow, like just level of it, level of oomph in your body. So if you are very hyper, like that, then the Yang Qi is definitely very active. Okay, it's up like here, like this. And if you're just, I have no will to live, then the Yang Qi is very low. It's very low. Okay, it's controlling that sort of spark, that level there. Yeah. Yang Qi also flows. It's a funny word to use. In lines. Oh my God. Sorry, guys. My handwriting's awful. Whatever. Flowing in lines. Not neatly. Definitely not. That would be nice, but it doesn't. But it has a linear flow. It's erratic. It jumps around, but it's not spherical. Yeah, it moves in lines. Yeah. It creates activity. Creates activity inside your body. So, Fa Gong, yeah? You know what that is? When some people are bobbing around, no names, trying to stay still, and desperately trying to do Wuji, but da-da-da. That's because the Yang Qi is moving to a greater degree. Yeah, essentially that's what it is. There is more Yang Qi moving. So what it does is it creates more inside the body, and the result is the muscles, like anti-slip brakes. Yeah, if any of you live in icy places, put the brake on, it goes do, 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 doesn't it? Very confusing if you're not used to those the first time you touch those brakes when you drive over here. So that is happening essentially in your muscles, like because the muscles are just switching on and off because they're receiving more of that energy, more of that Yang Qi moving through your system. We have to be careful of that because, oh, sorry guys, I'm going to talk a little bit this morning. You okay? A little bit longer? Sorry guys, I just realized I'm talking for a long time. You okay with this? Yes. I'll talk now and then we'll do lots of exercise. A mix of, don't sit all formal, get comfy. Lounge around like models or something, whatever you want to do, but don't kill your legs. Yeah, sit comfy. Yeah. Look at that, there we go. That's the spirit. Yeah. Just don't snore if you fall asleep, yeah? So you'll never hear the end of it. Yeah. Okay, so what are we talking about? Oh yes, the problem with that is the Fa Gong, that stuttering and that movement can change and go through stages, but we have to understand that that's what it is. It's because there's more something, which we'll look at what it is, Yang Qi moving, and it's causing the muscles to switch on and off, so you shake or shudder, or sometimes more subtle, yeah? Backwards and forwards, or this sometimes you see? Like I expect most people have had that at some point, haven't they, in Qigong around, or what am I doing? Why am I, like those kind of things. Because there's an error that some schools deliberately are saying that it's spirit center in the body, or something magical, or something enlightened, or that it's kundalini, or something like this. It's not. It's just increased movement of Yang Qi. No problem. Moving in your body, that's all it is. Nothing more. So it's causing the muscles to turn on and off. It essentially means, it's not wrong, it's normal, but it means that it's not yet relating to the Yin Qi properly. Okay, and I'll show you why in a minute. Once the Yang Qi relates to the Yin Qi, all of that stops. And then the immortal spirits will leave your body. They're not there anymore. Yeah? They can only enter when the Yin and Yang Qi is not in harmony with one another. It is electrical, ultimately. It's electricity. And you can feel it. It's everything from very faint tingling on the skin, which isn't worth worrying about, through to a very strong electrical current that moves through your body, through to a literal electrical current at some stage, actually. But it's electrical, and it moves in the nerves. It moves in the nerves, through the nervous system. So almost all of the times when they're trying to draw something up your back into your brain, for example, don't worry, not going to do that. At some stage in the process, what they mean is more electrical energy in the nervous system of the spine that is going up into the brain. to create certain reactions that they're trying to generate. But usually those things are done alongside enough development of yin qi to kind of guide it and anchor it. So the two are used together to create that balance, yeah? If you understand that it's electrical and it moves through the nerves, you can kind of see where the Fa Gong comes from, right? Because that's how the muscles switch on and off, right? Because it's, it's like that electrical energy is just coming and going to stimulate it. So the idea is, when we build both within the body, yeah, what we're trying to do is develop enough or increased yang qi movement through the system. And there's various ways of doing it. But we also build enough yin qi consolidation that it's guided in the right fashion. Because otherwise what will happen is you build more electricity in an electrical circuit and not tell it what to do. That's not awesome. Because where does qi go? Up. Yeah, bloody stuff. That's all it wants to do. It goes up. Rah! Like this. So you move into fight or flight. That's what will happen. You'll become more stimulated. And sometimes people will mistake that for more qi, like more energy. In the same way that people think they have more energy when they drink coffee, right? You don't really. You don't drink coffee and you've got more, well, I now have more vitality. That's not the case, but it can feel that way when you're stimulated. So the same can happen when the yang qi moves, but it's not really correct. Like it's okay, but it's not correct. While it's happening, it's quite normal for Fa Gong, but I'm not saying it's wrong, like correct in that way. I'm just saying it's a phase. It's a phase that most people will go through because the yang qi is not being guided correctly, ultimately. What happens when the Dantian is built, that field, is the yang qi will move, it will definitely move, but it will start to, in various ways, it's an oversimplification, be guided down towards that field in the abdomen. Do you understand that? Like it goes in. It's like the field becomes a container. So the yang qi moves into that sphere and then starts to build within that space. So when we're increasing qi in the body, what we're increasing is yang qi, but then we're containing it within the increased yin qi, increasing with that field. Does that make sense okay? Yeah.
So how are we building the yin qi? Because
Ah.
I understand the yin we're building through the Dantian
Yes.
practice, right?
That's right. And the yang qi is curious because there's various ways to build it. It changes at different stages. At the beginning, the yang qi actually, we just find and motivate what's already there. That's our first step. There's a way to activate it that we'll look at today. Then what happens after that is there are ways to produce it, and largely it's in the way that your mind interacts with certain regions in your body, and then actually there's an increase from there. At much later stages, we change the way the cells function so it produces more of it. There's actually a cellular change in alchemy or neigong to produce a lot. And then after that, there's more esoteric sources that are producing something. So we have a sort of sequential process. But at the beginning, we just find what's there, because it's like you have enough, but not quite moving enough, perhaps. We need to sort of shift it around a little bit. And then the yin qi we use to direct it. It gets weird. Some of the later stages for yang qi production. You'd be surprised. So yin and yang qi, we want to locate these and move them through the body. A couple of other points then on this. Because it is your nerves, first of all, I'm not a scientist. I never even looked at body physiology or anything. I just don't care. And I mean, even when I teach acupuncture, people get frustrated because I don't know the name of a bone. I got no idea. It's like arm bone, leg bone, hip bone, whatever. Needle goes near there. Who gives a shit what it's called in Latin or whatever? That's just not how I work. So some of this is like when I explain it, to me it's okay, it's a concept for you to understand, and it's also from tangible experience in my body and watching and feeling what's going on, and also what I'm being taught by people who are not also biological scientists either. So some of this, if you wish to, if you're that way inclined and you want to translate it across to something else, feel free. I don't mind, it's not a problem. I'm sharing a concept with you, but I will do my best. So essentially, because it moves in the nerves, there is something that happens because your nerves essentially store. They store things within your body as well. And this is definitely very evident within Naegong training. The actual mechanism of it, like I say, I'm not sure. But they stores things all over different regions of your system, yeah? And what it stores are memories. They're definitely stored there in different regions of your body. And I think even if it sounds strange, people subconsciously kind of know that anyway. Like, we kind of know that. You see people, like, when they get, like a big shock or something like this, will go to the solar plexus, or, you know, they know that, a lot of people just know that thing in their back just sort of came after that family member passed, or whatever, like something like that we kind of subconsciously know. And Chinese medicine obviously mapped a lot of these out. Not in TCM tradition, they didn't focus on it too much. You'll see sort of remnants of it in TCM, but in some of other systems of Chinese medicine, they're very specific about where different memories are stored in the body. So one that they still maintain in TCM is that anger and guilt tend to store around the hypochondriac region, around the ribs and things, but actually there's more exact maps to show where different types of memory are stored. This is your family stuff, generally in here, and things around you, sort of problems you have with your parents and what have you, and they're all over the body. And you find that most people will pretty much match that model to some degree. Now what will happen is when more of that yang qi is passed through those nerves into the body, as well as stimulating the movement of the muscles, like the Fa Gong, it can also stimulate those things that are trapped within the body as well. It's like they become hyper, just kind of released. And what will happen is that people will have a resurgence or a recollection of that memory, or something will come up. Yeah, so you might quietly sob or loudly sob in some cases. That can always be a bit of a shock when you're on a Naegong course or something like that. Or sometimes people will find after they practice, they just lay down at night and then they remember that thing from a number of years ago that's not really, like things like that. And it's quite funny because sometimes it can be like a heavy thing. Sometimes it can be trivial. It's amazing. I remember, wow, when I was 5 years old, that guy called me an idiot. And what? Why do I even recollect that? But it's still somewhere in there. It's quite amazing how it will do this. And at different stages, oh yeah, sorry, go.
So you're referring memories in terms of emotions?
Can be, yeah. Yeah, it can be. Majority of them, because generally those are the ones that you're most connected to if it had an emotional quality. But it can also be nonsense. Like people, as an example, I know people that have recollected and started humming 1980s children's TV program tunes. That's literal. That is like they come out. So it can be bullshit. Like, it's amazing what your mind stores, and then you realize how annoying your brain is. Like, why do I know the lyrics to so many crap songs and things? And where do they pop up? Meditation. Of course, there they are, humming away or whatever. So all of that stuff is stored in the body, but the trivial stuff doesn't matter too much. So what we tend to focus on is the emotional things as much as anything, yeah, and much more than anything else. It's all stored there, all in your brain. So sometimes speaking tongues, obviously that's normally associated with churches and things like that, sort of in Christian movements. That's not unusual in Neigong practice for that to come out, and it means nothing. It literally means nothing. Not a gift from God, not a special language. It's just mind bullshit. Like, it's just more stuff, and it stimulates the tongue and out it comes. The next thing you know, it sounds like they're in some kind of Indiana Jones movie or something like this, but it's just crap. It's just mind chatter coming out. It needs to pass, and the body will just process it, and you don't even know what it is quite often as well. It's kind of depersonalized. So sometimes you'll sob and you don't know why. It's like, oh, not sure. That's the best way, in my opinion. When you release something and you don't know what it was, perfect. That is the best way, because there's no chance of you reattaching to it. How can you reattach to it if you don't know what it is? You just let it out of the body, whether you're aware or you're not, who cares? It's okay, just let it pass through and let it out of the system. This to me becomes one of the strongest ways to let go, when there's no recollection of why. Yeah. We need to use this sensibly, because when it's releasing, the best thing you can do is understand, if it happens to you, which it happens to a lot of people, not all but a lot, if it starts to release those things from the body, we have to understand that you touch it, you push it a little, and then you stop and you just relax, okay? Because it's like anything. It's like I have, I don't know, like a little ball or something, and I just tap it to start it rolling, but I don't like chuck it like that across the floor. Because if it becomes too strong, you will then reattach. You'll reattach, right? So have you ever been to one of those New Age groups where they all wail and cry and releasing, or maybe you've seen them on YouTube or something. Yeah, there's lots of those. Yeah, where I grew up in a town there in Glastonbury in the UK, it's like every other building. That's what they do. I don't know what the equivalent town would be here in America, but I'm maybe Taos, I don't know, or something, where it's like every other building is like a sort of spirit. Sedona, yeah, definitely. Sedona. Asheville's like that, is it?
Asheville, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, there's a lot.
It seemed quite normal to me when I went there.
Woodstock.
Okay, Woodstock, yeah, well, okay. Yeah, well, those kind of towns. It's one of those kind of towns I came from, right, anyway. Yeah, definitely Sedona. So every other building is a group wailing. That's what it is. You open the door, say, oh, there's 50 people crying again. Okay, I'll go in the next door or whatever, and they've normally got a crystal balanced on their head or something like that. But what you will see is that the same people will be there 10 years later still wailing, 15 years later still wailing, 20 years later. It's like, come on. If it's not changing in 20 years, it's not working. Like, you are not getting rid of something that is repressed. You are simply reliving that thing that is repressed over and over and over again. Because the problem comes that you have a kind of, I don't know, you could draw it as a graph or something, I suppose. It's like starting to release. Oh, okay. What that means on a mechanical level is now Yang Qi is moving through the nerves and letting go of something. Awesome. That's great. So I check myself. How do I feel? I feel all right. Some little cry and recollecting that. That's cool. That's enough. Let it do that. And then what you do? Just pay attention, breathe, have a cup of tea if you want, whatever, it doesn't matter. Just let it do its thing. Not coffee, Americans, tea, okay? Just let it go through its thing, yeah? Even when you guys drink tea, why do you choose like you're like, right, I'm healthy, I'm not going to drink coffee, and then you drink like 400 years super strong tea. Like, you may as well have the fucking coffee. Like, it's bizarre. You guys love stimulants. You love stimulants over here. It's crazy. So a little bit is okay. Just sorry, I didn't mean to moan at you. A little sort of stimulation of that thing. But if I then go right into it, I wade into it, I let the reaction get too big, and I'm in it, you are now reinforcing that pattern. You are now sticking it back into your system. It's becoming something that's not being released. It's becoming reinforced. Obsessive, yeah. Do you understand that?
Its own trauma.
Huh?
It's becoming its own trauma in a way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, totally. Yeah, and then you have to make a decision. Do I want to get rid of it, or do I want to indulge in it? And that really comes down to your skill and your common sense, as much as anything. Yeah.
It seems not very simple, but with sadness that makes sense. But what about anger? Like,
Same. A little is okay. But if I've got someone that's you're now reinforcing that into your system.
So in my understanding and experience of anger, it needs to move, right? It's
Yep.
like you could just cry, but anger is like more physical, like get it out. But where is the supporting someone in that, right? Whether in
Yes.
this practice or in Chinese medicine or whatever, just to be able to move it, but not continue spiraling in the.
I don't agree, actually.
Okay.
I don't agree. I apologize, but for anger, I think that when people think they're releasing something, often they're not. So there's a momentary, or sort of acute or immediate frustration. Fair enough. That's okay. Like, if you go and have a shout in the corner or something. But if it's something that's been there for 20 years inside the body, like something long term, the kind of thing that gets released from this, I don't believe people are releasing it when they go into that fit of rage that you see where they're screaming and shouting and storming up and down. I think they're actually reinforcing it back into their system. So for me, again, it comes down to that common sense of we touch it, but we don't probe it too much. Because I don't think there's anything wrong with letting something out in little increments. You know what I mean? Like a little bit at a time. It's okay. You feel a bit less angry, no problem. We'll see what happens next week. And that hard-hitting, it's, I think, too much.
I
Sometimes,
agree.
yeah.
That's what I'm trying to say is like.
Oh, sure.
How do you help someone find that? Like, just take
Sure.
a walk about or do the.
Yeah. It's easy for me in British. We don't have emotions. No problem, right? Yeah, I mean, certainly that's where the skill of the teacher comes in, a bit of it in the space. I will literally stop people. Say, no, that's enough. Time to stop. And I will send them for a walk or something, but they cannot just carry on moving Qi through that process. I won't let them. They have to ultimately submit to my decision when they're in a class. That's what they decide to do, so they'll have to do it, or I can't teach them. But if they're on their own, then that will really come down to their common sense. Some people have it, some not, unfortunately. Unfortunately, yeah.
Some were presidents, so.
Yeah.
So what we're talking about is basically what's happening in the Fa Gong process.
Yes.
So I've noticed, like, when I practice, if I do happen to have some Fa Gong, I can stop it
Yes, yeah.
if I really want to. So is that what you're saying? So if something's like moving pretty intense, then you have to make a decision like, okay, should I let this keep going or should I kind of take control
Yes.
of it?
Yeah, yeah. Breathe, walk, warm water, drink it, chill out, kind of stuff.
But I mean,
Walk it off.
I mean, I guess if you can't stop it within the Wu Ji standing, but sometimes I can just bring myself to standing still.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's
Or you,
okay too.
or you could stop doing Wuji.
Right. That's what
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
saying.
yeah, yeah,
Too much.
yeah, 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 yeah. Walk around. You know, like all of these exercises are foot on the gas. There goes $80 in your country now. Or foot off the gas, just let it relax a little bit. You know what I mean? Like you're in control with the process, or you should be, hopefully. Yeah. Sorry, Jesse, do you have did I see your hand up?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
if you're experiencing something like that, it's not too bad.
Yeah.
Bringing your mind down to the area around the pelvis, will that alleviate it somewhat?
If you wish to, essentially you're talking about anchoring the breath and the mind once again, right? Yeah, that's okay. But I'll give you another trick. Here's another trick. And this is something that I wasn't shown, but I just realized through teaching, and then I won't talk for too much longer. Okay. Something I realized is that none of your emotions really exist, right? Not really. They're only decided by you. So the funny thing is, what I found, my sense of humor doesn't work in America, so I can't do it here. You're very different culturally. You don't get me, I don't get you when you tell jokes. I don't understand. But in Europe, it works okay. I can get away with it. So what will happen is when people start releasing things, if that comes up, and I never deliberately take a class there. I'm not aiming for that. That's not my aim. It's just sometimes that's where it goes. And okay, right, okay, it's going to be one of those courses. Fair enough. Goes to that place. Normally it's on about day 5. If you do a long thing, usually it gets to that. So what I've realized is actually the release is independent of the emotion. So therefore, if I can get the group laughing, they'll release their anger and their sadness, their worry as laughter. It's the funny thing. It's the same thing that comes out. It doesn't matter. It's just a repressed energy. Now, to ask somebody to change their own emotion is difficult, especially when they feel sad or angry or upset. Of course you can't. You can't just say, I'll laugh it off. You can't do that. So there is a skill in teaching that I very rarely get right, but if there's a skill in teaching with a group where you try to kind of guide or dictate the emotional quality within that space to a certain extent, which I try to get people in a good state of mind and humorous, and then they'll release those emotions without going through those experiences, generally. Does that make sense okay? Yeah. So it's like that energy is trapped inside you. It's going to come to the surface. When it's on the surface, that's when it passes through a filter of what you experience it as. But actually, if you're in a really good mood, it can come out as laughter. So I've managed to get sometimes groups where the whole room is just hysterically laughing and they don't know why. But what they're releasing is anger or sadness or fear. Now, to me, that's a better way. Like, personally, I'd rather laugh my traumas off than cry my traumas off. That would be a better way. So you can kind of play with that concept and see if that's something you can sort of manage. Does that make sense okay? Yeah, it's a tricky thing. But I think that, I'm going to sound so British here, I think that people place far too much importance on their emotions in general. Does that sound really English? Sorry about that.
Also,
Yeah.
relate to this, I think, about placing too much, I think we place too much on the story,
Yeah, true, yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
So I appreciate the writing that I've heard or read from you. Maybe it's in the Naegong course too.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of emotions in general. Like, have them, they give you a really nice experience of life, but they're not the most important things about you. They aren't to me. Not really. I think there's far deeper things in your character that make you interesting than how you emotionally feel, is my opinion. And I think that most of your higher or virtuous qualities come from there, personally. But I'm aware I'm in the minority with that, so please choose to ignore me. But I really think human beings are deeper. All of those emotional things are just surface things to me. Yeah.
So, one thing is to repress emotions and one is to not.
Well, I'm not advising you to do that. No, okay. Yeah.
No, I mean, you can't help having emotional reactions, in my case.
Say again, sorry, say again.
Huh?
Say again, sorry, I apologize.
You know, that some people cannot help but be emotional.
Sure, yeah. I'm not saying not to do that.
No, I'm saying, so
Yeah.
that's why, you're trying to
Yes.
differentiate between not having emotion or actually not
It's having versus-
focusing on the
It's having versus indulging
Okay.
that I think is the problem. And I'm also not against suppression. I'm only against repression. Suppression is not the same, right? Sometimes you have to stop yourself. If I walk into that post office and he's really annoying, I want to slap him around the face, I have to suppress that urge.
Well,
Okay, that's...
that's all, because then you're indulging.
Yeah, totally, yeah, so it's just...
So you're, at some point you have to limit.
Yeah, this is where I think that the common sense comes in. You have to kind of learn yourself. Because you'll know, if I take it too far, and then for the next 3 days I'm walking around slightly vibrating or that, maybe you took it too far. Do you know what I mean? And that's what we have to look at. If it's like, I feel quite good and it's not even relevant to me anymore. That was yesterday, whatever. That to me is a healthier, that's cool. You had the emotion went, and now you can get on with your day. And that to me is the skill for releasing it.